press my... Hi there, it's the Time Lord here. Thank you very much for coming on to my show and watching it. And we're doing the sunflower, etc., and all the rest of it. And this week I'm really excited because I'm going to introduce him now. I have Nick Bright of Photos by Bright. Hi Nick, how are you?
Hi Owen, great to see you. Very well there. Hope all is well with you and the first ever live stream.
Yeah. You're the first one where we're doing this live. All the other episodes have been recorded. We do have a recorded element a bit later, but I hope people are logging in and watching. But if they're not, then basically they can watch this later and catch up later. Right, so Nick, we're going to start with you directly. And I'm just going to ask you really to tell us a bit about yourself, about how you started in photography, video, whatever it was. How did you get started?
So my degree was graduated in 2009 with a computer animation degree. So not necessarily photography, but it teaches a lot of some of the principles, the storytelling. So I graduated into the fun times known as the recession back in 2009, and I basically just got a job working behind a bar at a local golf club. It just happened by an overheard conversation that I then started off working for a video production company, first as a bit of a kind of apprentice and learning, getting more of the ropes, learning more of the kind of business practice and how to, really run a business and get my hands around doing more video. At the same time, I was also doing photography, whether it's photographing sort of events, a few weddings. I had a large project photoshopping a bunch of images of cars in sort of the early days, and from that I was always kind of started with photography in some ways.
Right.
But I started to level up my kind of video skills. So since I then left the golf club, started doing video full time, I learned everything behind the camera and the other side. But as time went on, I kind of, I sort of realized a lot of my passion was with photography. Honestly, even though I worked for a video company, people would say to me, "Oh, you do photography, don't you?" Because often I just have a camera attached to me and people kind of just knew me for it. Even if you look through my phone, you'll see it's mostly photos, not videos. So it was, let's see, I believe it's around November 2018. I had just proposed to my fiance, just bought a house. So I thought the perfect time to leave my job and start my own business. But it's worked out well so far from there. And
now you mentioned one thing, sorry interrupting, you mentioned one thing there, weddings. Did you enjoy doing weddings out of interest?
Yes, I've videoed weddings, I've photographed weddings. I'll say I find photographing weddings can be easier, involves carrying a lot less kit.
Yeah.
But I think my first one was back in 2006, 2007 maybe. And I always try and work with an assistant as well, because I always just say, being in two places at once is, on that kind of day, it's important.
Yeah. I always felt it was a privilege to be asked to photograph a wedding, but it is very stressful. You're working in every single light condition. You're trying to get the shots. You've only got one chance of getting the kiss in the ceremony and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
It is a huge amount of pressure, whether video or photography, and I eventually moved away from it. But it wasn't I enjoyed doing it, but it wasn't my passion. But it's the most stressful form of photography I've ever done in my life, I think. But it was a privilege. So you're doing this photography, you're doing video and so on. Now, you do pet photography, don't you? Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yes.
Why you do pets?
So I think it really started back in February 2009, when I'd recently started the business, and my fiance and I went to see a puppy. And, we fell in love with this tiny little bundle of joy. And naturally, being a photographer, the very first time we went to see that puppy, I had my camera with me.
Right. Okay.
And since then, from when it was just a tiny little, I don't know, like tiny little thing, sort of that would fit in your hand, to, I say fully grown, still not that big, what is still essentially a live puppy.
What breed is it?
I captured it growing up.
What breed?
So it is a Pomeranian crossed with a Yorkshire Terrier Poodle or a Porky-Poo. And she does have her own Instagram page. It's Kiara the Porky-Poo.
Right.
Her whole life has been captured, and it's incredible to see how she's changed and how she's grown up. And
Wow.
Spending over a year photographing pets, I was like, you know what, I want to do this for other people.
Okay. So you're a dog person, not cat, and all the rest of it, I assume. But you photograph cats as well. No objection to doing so.
Yeah.
Which are easier?
Of course, yeah.
Dogs or cats? Which are easier? Would you say?
So, sort of growing up when I was younger, I had a cat, and I do find generally they're a bit more aloof. They will stay still a bit more if they're in the right mood. But dogs, they can be bribed, which is very useful. Honestly, it's the way you teach your dog. My dog has learned to pose fairly well in front of the camera now. Just a little tip: if you've got, your camera lens, you've got a treat, you can just pop it, treat just above the lens, and if you've got the right sort of lens in the right position, it will basically look like they're looking into the camera, and it looks very adorable. So it's a good little tip.
So that's a tip of getting a toy, a treat, whatever, above the lens. It's a bit like kids and so on. You used to get parents to be above the lens and so on, or behind me and so on. Okay, so that's that. I've actually shot with snakes. Have you ever shot with snakes?
No, I have not. How did that come about?
It was a modelling shoot, and I know a snake handler in London, and I had a model coming in my studio when I had a studio, and she wanted to do something Egyptian, Queen Nefertiti, something like that, and I said, I tell you what, I'll get a snake. And there's this famous python called Ralph. It's been used on a lot of shoots all over the country. And I shot with this model, with this snake, and she was made up with a makeup artist and so on to look like Egyptian queen. We didn't quibble about the fact that it was an Indian python. This queen was meant to be from Egypt. But that was the first one. And then the second one was another model shoot. And that was with a 12-foot long python rather than 9-foot long. So I shot with a 9-foot long python and a 12-foot long python as well. And snakes are brilliant creatures. Absolutely love them. Their skin is like silk. It's just incredible. But at one point, when the snake was wrapping itself around the chair and around the model itself, it rested beneath her shoulder and just rested there. And I said, right, we need to do another shot now. And the snake handler said, well, I'm not going to move her, the snake. I said, why not? And he said, you try. And you try, and it's solid muscle. And it wouldn't move. The models go, oh. And the snake handler said, no, it's fine, because the snake is comfortable. They always go for darkness and heat. And the snake is comfortable, and it's comfortable with you, and that's why it's resting. If it wasn't comfortable, it would be doing a lot more. And then she said, well, is it hungry? And he said, it wouldn't eat you because you're too big. They wouldn't be able to eat an adult. And so pythons only kill what they can eat and when they're hungry. And he said, no, I fed it about 3 months ago. It'll be fine. So,
very reassuring.
So on another issue with pet photography then, what about lighting? What sort of lighting do you use for pets? Is it the strobe or is it continuous lighting? What do you use?
So generally, the way I approach pet photography is I do a lot of stuff outside, because if you've got the right sort of day, it looks nice and natural, and it kind of reminds you of where you go with your pet. So I'd advise somebody, especially when it comes to getting to behave well, if they're in a new place, there's going to be a lot of different smells, lots of different sights. They're going to be a lot more distracted. Yeah. If you can find somewhere where they're quite comfortable, where they're not so distracted and you bring lots of good treats, you hold their attention a lot better. I can sort of obviously do a lot of the studio stuff, but the way I quite like doing things is having that natural kind of feel where the pet's in its environment. And, if you are looking for, that sort of that classic golden hour as sunset's coming in, obviously you can do a shoot then when the lights, it's that beautiful golden glow. Or, if you find a bright summer's day, that way you can get the camera at a much faster shutter speed and freeze any motion. So if you've got, you've just got the dog to run over the other side of the field and get it to come back to you can get, firing off, maybe 10, 20 shots. You get that perfect shot of the dog running, looking straight at the camera, with lots of energy, enthusiasm.
That's right. And if you're using a camera where you can adjust the shutter speed and so on, that's really good. Although the new smartphones are coming out, you video and you get freeze frame. Now, I'm assuming, I haven't looked in the technology too much, I'm assuming that basically that is a video on a smartphone taking individual JPEG shots or some type of shot that can be made into a JPEG, and then you freeze it, and then that's a JPEG, but that's still relying upon a fast shutter speed to get it without motion blur. So it's understanding your camera, whatever it is, whether it be a smartphone, whether it be a DSLR, understanding the settings on it and its capabilities. And if you're moving to that golden hour, that sunset, a smartphone reading the light settings may actually get it wrong, where a DSLR actually comes into play, or a film camera or whatever, where you understand the settings. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think sometimes the move out of automatic to manual can be a bit scary, but when you have full control, you really know what to expect from your camera. There are some apps on smartphones that will allow you to control, but I honestly find I've got those apps on my smartphones. I still just use it as a phone because it's another thing to do.
I agree. I mean, I used to have loads of apps. I deleted them all because I'm not using them. But I still go out occasionally with my smartphone, and part of this Sunflower Challenge is I'm showing people how to take shots with smartphones. And other photographers I've had on, Emma Hollings and Joe Scott, they actually teach people smartphones as well, even in lockdown. They're running courses, as are many other photographers and so on. And I must mention, actually, a friend of mine, Neil Ben, he runs video on smartphones as well. He's an ex-BBC producer, BAFTA-nominated producer. Of over 30 years, and he teaches video on smartphones. So smartphones have their place, but to get it honed, understanding something where you have control, it's a bit like an automatic or a manual car, isn't it? You don't go racing in an automatic car. You go racing in a geared car or a semi-automatic where you have control over the speed and so on, and braking, accelerating and so on. It's a bit the same with cameras. Some petrol head is going to absolutely disagree with me and point out, but anyway, the analogy breaks down, but I don't care, so... Okay,
that's a good analogy.
That is a brilliant couple of tips, but thank you very much, Nick. I don't know whether you've got time to hang around. We're going to watch now something I recorded earlier, just 2-3 minutes long, how to create panoramic photos. If you are still around at the end, we'll say goodbye then. If not, I'll say goodbye now. Thank you very much for coming into the show. We will have you on again as this develops. But basically, we're going to now move into a short video of how to create panoramic shots. Okay, so panoramic shots. Here's some shots I took down in Canary Wharf during reasonable lockdown. There were people about and so on. It wasn't completely empty. And if we click along, you can see that there are different people on there, and these steps were never really clear. So if I click through again, and I just clicked into develop in Lightroom, and you can see there's one person there, they're carrying a Boris bike, Santander bike, whatever they're called, down the steps, and I wanted to do that. So go back to the beginning, then I'm going to go select all in the edit section, right click, and then I'm going to go photo merge panorama. And what the software is going to do now is it's going to look at this picture and merge them together, taking out a lot of the people. But before we go back into Lightroom proper, there's the white lines there. Just go fill edges, and it's going to fill those edges now of any white. It just does some pixels. There's the black from a filter holder there, which I'm going to take out in a minute. Here we go. So press R, just move in slightly to take that black edge out, which is from the filter folder. And there are still several people on these steps, and I take it back out into Photoshop, sorry, and I just do a bit more editing, taking all these people out, and I then take one image and put that guy with the bike back into the picture. Okay, and there are other controls here: exposure, contrast, highlights, etc. You can change around in Lightroom to get the looks that you want, but there's one down here which is just bringing a touch of vignetting. If you do too much either way, it just looks ridiculous, a bit like those old Victorian photos. And there we are. And now look at the finished one. Okay, so we now move on to a vertical where I've still taken it with the tilt shift several photos. We again go to photo merge, panorama, and Lightroom is going to realize that it's upright. Again, we've got, once done that, the white, fill the edges, and then we need to just click on merge, and we've got a merged image. Now on this one, it's not quite vertical, so I'm just going to pull that vertical back towards me there, and then we've got an upright line, but we've got this white now. So click R, just move that in, click R again, it's back out, and we've now got it almost vertical. Okay, the far building is slightly up. And then the other thing I'm going to do, remember, is just bring a bit of vignetting in. Don't want too much because that blue up there will go too dark. And that's the final image. Hi there, we are back in the room with my... Oh, let me unmute you. Yeah, we are now back in the room with Nick. Thank you very much for hanging around, Nick. What are you shooting at the moment in lockdown? Are you shooting anything?
So right now, the couple of projects I've had are I photographed a kitchen showroom and somebody putting some new signage up as a company was going through a rebrand whilst in lockdown. So they wanted to preserve that moment as the old signage turned into the new signage. And right now I'm also photographing a variety of different beer bottles, as I'd like to get in touch with a few beer manufacturers, as I do enjoy beer every now and then. And I'm basically just looking to really hone the different styles of photography you can get.
Yeah.
Gives a different, just different lighting even in the same situation can look so different, and the reflections on the beer bottle can be very challenging to work around.
Yeah, they can be. I photographed once, a couple of times, artwork in picture frames and learning how to do that and using lights at 45 degrees and so on. But shiny products are very, very hard difficult to photograph, glass, plastic and so on. All right, well, that is brilliant. Thank you so much, Nick, for joining me on this first live broadcast. I'm hoping it worked okay on YouTube. I've got some hissing of my fans going off. I don't know whether that's come out on YouTube. Sorry if it has. But we will see you soon.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right. Have you done that? Can you do the live long and prosper?
Oh, of course. Absolutely.
Live long and prosper.
Right.
That's right.
Great talking with you.
Live long and prosper. May the force be with you. Thank you very much, Nick. You take care. Cheers.